Great. Hi, how are you? This is Dr. Damaris G from Mindfully Integrative Podcast. Thank you again for joining in on this episode, our mindful chat with Dr. Dolores Fazzino. She is 40 plus years in the healthcare field. She is an intuitive, an energy whisperer, a wellness expert for many, many years, and definitely someone that I have followed, mentored, and she is an amazing author of 4 books and so much more. In addition to that, she is an OR nurse. She has so many things to tell you about. She's a spiritual healer, and wellness is just one part of what she knows and does throughout these years. And I can't wait for you guys to listen and see more about her. So, Dr. Dolores, thank you so much for joining in today.
Oh, Damaris, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to sharing. And I think your podcast is such a timely um, platform because in healthcare, there's going to be lots of changes and changes that, as we know, um, what we've been doing for so long is no longer working, and we're actually opening up to more possibilities. And, for those of us who've been in the alternative world, integrative medicine, complementary and alternative, it's like this is our time. This is really our time. And it's exciting to be here and to be able to step up to the next level of what healthcare could possibly be. Health and wellness care, let's say that, because it's more than just health, it's wellness too.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge through the years, and to tell people about kind of where they should be going. How about just a general fun fact of like things that people may not know about you that you may not have shared with that
Well,
we
you
can.
know what? I was on a track when I was a teenager to become a concert clarinetist. It wasn't until the
Wow.
11th hour that I switched to decide to go into healthcare, and there's a whole story around that. And I would be happy to share that because that's always an interesting. It was a pivotal point in my life when this happened, and so people always ask me, "How did you get into what you're doing, and why? What's my why?" Well, you know what? I have to go back to my childhood. I was born an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person, and I was probably one of the first indigo kids that was probably born here on Earth, and so I was wired differently. I felt things very deeply, and the big wave of people didn't come until decades later. So my parents really didn't know what to do with me because I questioned everything, and even when it came down to religion, was born Catholic. I'm now a recovering Catholic, and and I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious. But the thing is like what was happening during my childhood shaped my future. And a lot of times you don't realize what's going on until you're on the other side of it and you look back and you see how all the dots lined up.
Hmm.
So my dad was sick when I was, from second grade to 12th grade. What had happened with him is that he went to the driving range, threw his back out, had to have back surgery. And in the 60s, he had back surgery, but he picked up a hospital acquired infection.
Oh, goodness.
So he was on his deathbed. He was almost there for 2 months. They didn't have the antibiotics and the modalities to figure out what was going on at that time in the 60s. And he recovered from that, got better. And then 4 years later, he came down with a cold and then he got really, really sick and ended up in the hospital again.
Mhm.
Got better. He would be in there for 2 months at a time. And this happened about 4 times between 1966 and 1976.
Wow.
So, growing up as a child in a household where you weren't allowed to feel, I took up music and that I channeled all my emotion into music. And so I was on the track to become a concert clarinetist. And what had happened when I was 16, and that was about 1976, my dad was in the hospital again for the same thing. It was like
Mhm.
repeating
The
Groundhog
story.
Day, the movie.
Oh, Groundhog Day. Okay.
Yeah, it was awful. And having that roller coaster ride, not knowing whether or not the other shoe was going to drop and my father was going to be dead or alive was a
Oh.
scary place. So I excelled in
Mm.
music. And what was happening at Tandem at the same time was that my mother was exploring alternative modalities for healing because she felt Western medicine was failing her. And I laugh about this now, but at the time, the National Enquirer was the big, webinar, or the big, website back in the
Mm.
70s. This predates anything,
Before yeah, none of that
Yeah,
was over
exactly.
here.
That was
Yeah.
like Google. for- I laugh about it because it is funny. But anyway, she came across this Presbyterian minister from Carroll, Michigan, who had the gift of laying on of hands. And she was fascinated by that. And she contacted him and really wanted him to come see my father. However, my father was the biggest skeptic ever. He should have been from Iowa, the show me state, or no, Missouri, the show me state.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
because
he needed
he
this.
never believed it unless it was like had a vision.
Exactly. So my father was in the hospital all at the same time when this was all happening.
Mhm.
My mom said to my father, I'm thinking about, what do you think about this? She said, only, my father said, only if the doctor says it's okay. So my mother marched down to the nurse's station. There was my dad's surgeon, and the surgeon, my mom said to the surgeon, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to see my husband. Would that be okay? Surgeon looks up, not missing a beat, said, sure, that's fine. So my mom went back to my dad's room, shared the news with him. He agreed to have the minister come out. My
Mhm.
mom then went back to the nurse's station where that exact surgeon was sitting, and she announced to him, said, my husband agreed to have the spiritual healer come. The surgeon looked up and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to that.
What?
Yeah, that was the whole beginning of the journey. Now, in 1976, I should have backed up a little bit. The CAT scanner first came out. So they put my dad underneath the CAT scanner, and what they found was that whatever infection was going on with my father was stemming from where he had his back surgery back 10 years prior. So their solution
Wow.
at the time was he would have to have surgery, a spinal fusion. And remember, in the mid 1970s, back surgery and spinal surgeries were in their neophyte stages of development.
Mm.
Okay. So it came
Wow.
with a big risk factor of he would either be paralyzed, dead, or he would be okay. And my mom was not going to have anything to do with that.
Wow.
So flash forward a month after that, I come home. There's the Reverend Holmes, my two grandmothers, and my siblings, and my father. And, he had my father sit down and he said to my father's name was Joe, Joe, I noticed one of your legs is shorter than the other. We all knew that, but I don't know how he knew that because my dad's shoes were nowhere to be found. He had a lift and he was barefoot, but he was able to see that there was something, not right. So he said, and I think he knew intuitively my dad was a skeptic. So he said to my father, Joe, put both your feet up. And sure enough, there was like a 1 inch gap. And he said, put your feet down. And then he started saying prayers, touching his solar plexus, his crown chakra, and, quoting scripture from the Bible and stuff like that. And then what had happened was like 3 minutes didn't go by. He said, Joe, put your feet up again. And they were both the same length. In that
Wow.
moment, I've never seen my dad bawl like he ever did because, like I said, he was from the show me state, even though he wasn't. He had to see it to believe it. And in that
Mm.
moment, I knew that my path was no longer going to be in music, but it was going to be going into healthcare to show that there's a different way to heal besides what we've been programmed to think.
You've been on this
Now,
path for a lot. So you have seen, you weren't just going into healthcare to just go into the traditional route.
no,
You were starting it from the
yeah. And I
beginning.
was always intuitive and curious.
Yeah.
But let me just finish with my dad. So
Oh.
after that session, it was about a half hour. You're instructed to go lie down. And my dad slept for 24 hours because his energy field was completely open and it was getting, reintegrated and he was processing. So he woke up 24 hours later. He went back for a repeat CAT scan a month later. They found no evidence of the infection. And in fact, he never had to have that surgery. He never had to revisit that problem in his life. And he passed away about 8 years ago at the age of 80.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How does he, like, through the years that, even though it was 8 years ago, from that time until his passing, how was he with spiritual healers and the feel and
He
obvious
he
medicine?
was he's very open to that because unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that my great grandmother on or his grandmother on, his side of the family used to see, she's this old Italian Sicilian lady, and people would used to go see her when they weren't feeling well. So it
Hmm.
was in the family, yet he was very resistant to it. And
Mhm.
so, my dad has probably been my biggest supporter my whole entire life. And I know that this has all been pre-planned and it's been part of my journey.
Mm.
And I've learned over the years in connecting with the other side, because when you are connected, you're not connected just with your stuff. You connect your. I visit my deceased loved ones daily. You know what I'm saying? It's not
Wow.
like they're gone. They're just in another dimension and frequency, and you could tap into that at any time. And my grandfather, his father, actually orchestrated this whole thing because he knew that he needed, it was not his time,
Mhm.
but yet it was part of what I needed to learn as well to get me to where I'm going.
Wow. This is deep. We're going to different dimensions of consciousness
Totally.
here. And
Totally.
I love to know, with this, it sounds like that was one struggle in your timeline, but it sounds like you had many of parts that got you into this field. Obviously, that was, like, I guess, the starting point, but you transitioned over the years.
And it is. It's been an interesting journey. I'm not going to say it's been the easiest one.
Mm.
And I've really I'm a firm believer in walking your talk and leading by example.
100%.
Um and just being genuine and authentic. And fortunately and unfortunately, it has been a positive and not so positive thing in my life too, because I'm a truth teller. I call it as I see it. And when you're an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person, when you don't have your boundaries firmly developed, that's when it gets a little dicey.
Hmm.
Okay. Because when we talk about empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive people, our energy fields are sometimes at the fringes enmeshed with other things. We pick up on other things that are not ours, yet we feel them very deeply and try to heal them as if they are ours. Okay. Um, what I have found is that sometimes when you're sensitive, and I think Damaris, you're probably like that too, you could go into a room and feel the essence of what had happened before. If there was an argument or something not so good happened, you
Yeah,
could feel
I
that.
energetically, like, I feel that there is always some sort of, or how someone is feeling, even whether good or bad.
Yep.
Yeah, that there's that sense, but, like, oh, like, I'll go to someone and say, "Oh, are you doing okay today?" Or are you feeling, like, even if it was positive or negative,
Yeah.
they'll be like, "How did you know that?" And I'd be like, I know how to explain it. You probably have an even more depth thing, but yes, there's times when I
Yeah.
just know.
Well, the thing is, it's like for me, I've had to learn how to protect myself, my energetic field, because um, I love being by myself. It's just like I enjoy my downtime because that's where I get to recharge. Because sometimes, energetically, if it's too peoply outside, I just have to pull back because everybody's energy is, excuse the expression, sometimes it's an energetic shit show,
Oh, wow.
especially when you go into a hospital when you're that way as well.
How did you handle that as an OR? Because you're an OR nurse in the beginning, right?
I
Or
am, and
medical.
actually, I'm not really an OR nurse. I'm actually an assistant surgeon, so I assist in surgical
So, oh,
procedures.
that's just that, like,
Yeah,
not just.
yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
So
Like,
yeah,
that's a lot.
it's always interesting because I always chuckle because yeah, there's maybe 12 physical people in the room, but there's so many more behind the scenes helping out.
Mm,
And it's really kind of cool because my gift has always been to be able to read energy and diffuse it and bring like a peace and calm to the area, or to the area. And for the longest time, I've been doing this type of work, on and off for the last almost 30 years. I can't believe it's been that long. Um, and, it's like when you do something and you know that you've done this before, it's like you take to it like a duck to water, and you don't even know why, but you just flow into that modality. And I think a lot of times we come in with these gifts that we've done before, and we're here to, assist in any way we can to move things forward here on earth. So I think the biggest compliment I've ever gotten from surgeons was this. They're like, Dolores, we love it when you're here. Everything goes so smoothly and the patients do so well.
I
So,
bet.
that aspect of my practice, because I've been an independent contractor for a very long time, I never had to advertise my services. It was all word of mouth. And at the height of my career of assisting, I was working with over 50 different surgeons in different specialties and at 7 different hospitals here in San Diego. But that was my secret sauce. And it's about being able to, we all talk about being the calm in the storm.
Mhm.
Okay. But also, it's learning how to be the calm within yourself when everything else is going crazy.
Crazy chaotic.
Yeah. And I think, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but, everything that's happened in the last year and a half around the whole COVID thing,
Right.
it's no mistake, because, I look at it from a different perspective. I think in society, we've been geared to always be in motion and doing.
Mhm.
And even in corporate world and our culture, if you're not considered a productive member of society, not unless you're constantly doing something.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right. The average person doesn't know how to just sit still.
exactly, because it's counterintuitive to what they are. But yet, those are where the pieces of wisdom come in. And I had been teaching this theory for a very long time. And, with everything with the COVID, people have been on this, I'm going to call it not a merry-go-round, but doing go round of life. It's just like they're on this merry-go-round that constantly goes. They know they have to get off. They know they're not healthy. They know they're not happy, but society says you have to do, like make something happen, push a boulder up a hill. To me, it's fatiguing and exhausting. I know I lived that when I created my first business.
Mhm.
That's what it was all about. The unfortunate thing by doing that, I created an autoimmune condition for myself, and I was
Mm.
exhausted all the time. So
Um,
I knew going forward, like 15, 20 years ago, that I had to do things differently in order for me to be happy, healthy, and wise. So through meditation, I got this whole concept. And it's like, you have a list of doing. When you're doing, you're in your mind. When you're in your mind, you're not in the present moment. You're either contemplating yesterday, worrying about tomorrow, trying to make something happen. There's a lot of force and power, and you could label it masculine if you like, but there's also a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And we know that just because of research and what we've seen in the industry is that when you have anxiety, stress, and fatigue, it's a setup for getting sick.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a complete setup. It like you put
it's a
those
complete
together, it's a
setup.
perfect storm.
Totally. So, what had happened, so people know this, but yet they are afraid to get off that because how am I going to make my money? How am I going to do this? Blah, 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 blah. Their busyness, and if they have kids on top of that, they're like always carting them someplace. And it's just like they're not taking care of themselves. They, are constantly in motion and doing. Well, guess what? The merry-go-round stopped last March. It
Like
came to a
forcefully.
proverbial stop, right?
Like forced, like period, stop, end of sentence, because you don't have a choice. You didn't have a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on a grander
I mean,
scale,
we're
everything.
joking about it now in a sense, but yet it was very emotionally driven, but yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it was interesting because now you have people who were always in motion not knowing what to do with themselves because they're not supposed to be doing anything. And, I always question, if you have to be in motion all the time, what are you distracting yourself from?
Mm. People
Yourself.
are afraid. They're a very, I mean, I have noticed for, general conversations, not even in a mental health, perspective, just the stopping for someone, they don't even know what that, like, it's like, oh, I have to stop. Oh,
Yeah.
that means I have to sit here with myself. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Ah.
and that it's really funny. So when, you had to learn how to be, okay? So, and it's not a this or that, and it's not a 180 flip, you know, but the thing is like, you have to learn how to, number one, be with yourself, because I love this quote. I made it up myself. The longest relationship you're ever going to have with yourself, with anybody, is the one you have with yourself. So what is that like, and how are you treating yourself?
How, do you know how to do that?
Oh,
Well,
yeah, you have to. Yeah. Well, that's it. Do you know how to do that? Because I find that people are afraid to feel, number one, because it scares the bejeebers out of them. They think once they lift Pandora's box of emotions, it's never going to shut.
mm,
But that's also a misnomer, because we know that once you step into whatever you're feeling, it's energy. You step into it, you experience it, dissipates, it neutralizes, you're on the other side of it.
you're on the other side.
Yes,
I say this more and more, the all those struggles and those negative parts, like once you're in it, then you're able, like the light opens and you're like, holy cow, I can get past that. And yeah,
exactly.
there's so much more that comes from it. It's just hard to sit in it.
Absolutely. It's uncomfortable, it's ugly, it's not pretty.
Mm-mm.
But yet, I feel it's a necessity in order for each individual to become more aligned with who they are and
Yeah.
being comfortable. Because the next piece is really important, because when you are in being, you are establishing a relationship with your inner knowingness, your higher self, your intuition, whatever, your God source, your God spark, whatever you call it, you are establishing a relationship with that. And that is your barometer, because once you're able to get to that point where you trust that inner knowingness, no matter if it's counter to what's around you, and you stand in your ground, you have regained your sovereignty as a human being.
That's beautifully said. Beautifully said. I don't even have enough words for that. That's beautifully said.
Well, just take it in. It's just like, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I
And how many times we as individuals have given our power away to something outside of ourselves. And, we're in healthcare, we see this probably more so than ever. We have a whole society that has lost that inner knowingness and connectedness, where we have all the right answers for us. It may not be the right thing for you, Demarius, or our neighbor, but it's the right thing for you.
mm-hmm.
And so, we're going through a renaissance right now of reconnecting with ourselves, basically.
Do you think though, like obviously there was negatives to the COVID sense, but do you believe that because you're saying that it was supposed to happen and we're kind of trying to connect back to ourselves, do you think that this was a purposeful good thing in like their, I don't know, I mean a positive outcome of it all?
You know, I feel that, when you look back at every other, you know, crisis that we've experienced over the years, okay, like the 9/11 thing,
Mm-hmm.
the 2008 financial debacle. All of those were, I call them like wake up calls
Mm-hmm.
to, unite people, but also for people to wake up from being asleep, because a lot of people are unconscious, and we had
Oh,
talked about
totally.
that earlier. It's just like, and once you wake up, when people start waking up and they realize, okay, you know what, something's not right, I'm not feeling right within this, I'm not aligned with what this was,
Mm-hmm.
and they start exploring and finding out where their path is. They've woken up to their mission and path. And there's other people who have already been there and are well into it, and walking their path and, awake. So it's like there's three phases. Some people are going to be unconscious and unawake this whole lifetime. That's
Right.
probably what they signed up to do before they
Yeah.
came. Who knows? Some
Yeah.
people are, going to transition and wake up at different parts of their lives. You might have been sleeping your whole entire life, and when you're 50, you all of a sudden wake up, or maybe when you're 20, you wake up. Who knows?
Yeah.
Everybody's on their own path. But yet, many of us who've been here for a long time and have been awake for a long time, it's almost as if energetically we set the forefront to assist that, because we had to be the pioneers, so to say, the way showers.
The way showers. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, we had talked about like how people, where they are in their in their consciousness. And I think before, I mean, and I'm still learning this myself, I would get angry because I didn't see people wanting to wake up, or they didn't see
Yeah.
the kind of things that I was starting to see. And I was, I got frustrated, and now I had to step in myself even and say, okay, that's not your path, that's them, and you have to, sit with that, and be okay with this is who they are. And
Yeah.
and I always was trying to fix, like, not just fix, but like wanting people to be awakened, and I
Yeah.
can't force that. And
No.
that's a learning process for me, even
Oh,
on my
and it
end.
is. And the thing is that, as a healer, people would come to me, could you help heal my someone's, my brother or my husband? And I said, well, are they aware that you're wanting to do this? Because the
Yeah.
thing is like, maybe they don't.
Right.
And it's not our job to fix them. I said, because, sometimes what happens when you interfere with a person's karma, that's worse than, not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
But,
So true.
I think the most important thing, especially when you get triggered by stuff, and we all get triggered, trust me, nobody's exempt from that. It's like we always have a choice in those situations. It's like, okay, I'm being triggered. Do I react, or do I pull back and just look at the bigger picture of what's going on? And, why is this triggering me? I always ask that question, as I'm kind of observing and not reacting. And that's taken a very long time for me to be able to do that, because I find that as a student of metaphysical stuff and, esoteric stuff and woo woo stuff, whatever you want to call it, um, it's like, how could I lead by example, but also how could I make it better in a different way? And I read an interesting book, and it's actually from the Spiritist community down in Brazil. There was a medium by the name of Alec Kardec, and he apparently would communicate with newly crossed over souls on the other side when they would make their transition over there, and he'd get the information. Fascinating stuff. A
Wow.
showstopper for me was this. We are told we have a life review when we're on the other side. We go through every situation that we ever experienced. And but it took it a step further. We experience every experience that we experienced, and how it was received by the other person.
So our perception might have been one way, but the situation is looking it out through someone else's eyes.
Yes. And also, like sometimes we say things out of anger, the
Mm-hmm.
impact that it had on that person and their life.
Mm.
To me, that was a showstopper,
Wow. That,
because
I mean, that's
it's huge.
because
Because it's
what your words you state and say have
exactly
a reflection on
right.
how
And
your life will be, or how things will go forward.
you have to remember, everything is energy. Your words are energy, your thoughts are energy, your beliefs are energy. When we all are contributing to collective consciousness, that big pool of everybody's stuff out there, we are constantly adding to that. So, my hope is that for me, that whatever I do, I'm adding to that pot, but it's a positive thing to negate some of this not so nice stuff that's out there.
Not so nice
Because
stuff.
it's a ripple effect. It's like collective consciousness is like this big, vast, calm lake. Okay. We're a pebble, whatever we say or do, we drop into that lake and it ripples out and it's affecting everybody. So, when you look at things from that perspective, it's like, how can I make things different? Because we always have a choice. People don't think we do, but we do.
That's an interesting way of putting it, because I think initially everyone would choose, they may choose one way or react or feel, or they may think that it's always this, but it it's a conscious or unconscious way of thinking. And then I guess through time, I
Yeah.
guess it's a
When
path.
you're on automatic or asleep,
Mm,
that's where a lot of the reactive stuff comes in. Look at our society, what's happening sometimes. It'll give you a indicator of what's kind of happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very true. You'll have to be on the show again to discuss more on that.
You're so welcome.
um, I feel another aspect, you have so much wealth of knowledge, but do you have a tidbit or a mindful, well, I know that you've have many of aspects, but something that you could share with the listeners that that they could take away, and of course they'll be following you. I'll have them in the show notes, but a little takeaway that you would like to share.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing I could share with people right now is this. And I know there are a lot of empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive people out there. They just haven't recognized that they are. And if they're ever feeling triggered, one of the first things that I tell my coaching clients to do is this: by the laws of the universe, if this is not my stuff, you're not allowed to come in my space. Okay. And I say this because energetically, we're here on earth for, to experience free will. Nothing is allowed to come into our space to affect us energetically unless we allow it. And sometimes the allowance is an unconscious allowance. So when you
Mhm.
state that, a lot of times what happens, things will switch quickly.
Mm.
It's like flipping a switch. It's not about having to go through years of therapy or anything like that. People who know me, that I'm a minimalist when it comes to like tools and stuff, because if it's too complicated, I the hell am not going to do it. And I know nobody else will. But this is the most simple thing to shift energy quickly, is that if you're feeling something and something feels off and you're getting really angry about something, or just feeling really sad or depressed, and that's not your nature, or you walk into a building and you feel like energy's coming towards you, just say, if this is not my stuff, you need to leave my space immediately in the names of the laws of the universe. And that's it. And usually it'll go like this. So I invite people to try this little experiment because it works.
I'm gonna try it today.
Good for you.
I will. I'm gonna try it today. I feel like there's always something, at least through the day that may come up. Um, Dr. Dolores, I mean, you've been such an amazing guest, and I'm so appreciative of your time and your knowledge and just your words for our listeners and those watching. I'd like to, of course, find out how they can get to know you or reach out to you, or if you have any upcoming events, please let us know. And of course, they'll be in the show notes and in the links, but please share with anyone what's going on with you.
Well, this is a very interesting time in my career. I'm actually getting ready to write my fifth book, and it is
Fifth book.
actually,
I'm
yeah,
just trying
fifth
to
book.
write my one book.
And it's actually a book on the theory that we just talked about, the doing versus being. But it's called like Reconnecting to Self, Return to True Health and Lasting Wellness. And it's going to be probably available this fall. And we're doing a lot of virtual stuff right now. I was supposed to be at a live event in Scottsdale, and that kind of got put on the back burner. But I know I'm going to be at an event in Phoenix. I know it's going to be in August, and it's with Wellness by Choice and Enterprising Women with Angelina Music-Kamp. So the exact dates for that will probably be on my website in the future, but people could go to my website. It's doloresfazzino.com. And if they need to contact me, they could contact me at Dolores at doloresfazzino.com. And I offer sessions, coaching, healing, all of the above, and I'm really a good mentor too. So if somebody's looking for a mentor, I'm more than happy to advise and offer my 2 cents.
No, I
So,
greatly appreciate it. I
oh,
mean,
and the last thing too is that I'm putting together a course that will probably be launched as a beta in September. So look for that as well.
oh, wonderful. I can't wait. I can't wait for you to, bring it out. Keep us posted. And I will have you back on the show probably even before then, maybe, or after, we'll see. And we'll definitely have to find out more, further things, and we'll have different events. So I so look forward to, seeing more of you. And I thank you so much for your time, your space, and you are definitely a multifaceted wellness expert. So thank you again. And for being on the show. And mindful integrative podcast guests and listeners, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed our mindful chat with Dr. Dolores Fazzino. You will see all her links on our show notes and www.doloresfazzino.com and all her upcoming events. Thanks so much, guys, for joining in today, and hope you find a mindful way each and every day. Namaste.